I think we'll probably start a couple of minutes after just to see if other people roll in. I know this isn't a harder time zone as some people were saying about when it got scheduled, but I think it's all the meetings are harder time zones for somebody. So, Claire, you can start whenever you feel like is correct. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I'm in a meeting room with an 18th floor view that's going to distract me all day. I apologize for that.
Oh, wow. Oh, that'll do. That's lovely.
Yeah. Turns out Tokyo is very, very big, as is Shenzhen. So.
Okay, I think we'll get started then.
Yeah, Claire, your question's good though. Is Peter in the room? Did he appear or not? No. Okay. So you're welcome to sit up there, but honestly, I doubt we need it. So.
Okay, fab. Welcome everyone, especially those of you who've flown over and online at odd times. I don't think I've got control of the slides. Wes, are you okay to click through them?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. So, as standard, here's the note well. I think we've all seen this. I'll leave it on screen for a couple of minutes. Okay, and there we go. I've got the slides control. That's handy. So, yep, we've all seen it. Thank you. Here's a link to the other IETF documents, so processes, procedures, codes of conduct, copyright. I think we're all fairly familiar with them at this point. Obviously, the session is being recorded. I'll ask Peter if he's happy to be our note taker as our secretary. Shepherd. Sorry.
I don't know if there's a Peter in the room. So
I see him who logged in, so I'm not sure what happened. I'll start taking notes and see if he pops in.
I think I can see him on the chat channel, so he's here. Links to the data tracker and about us and what we've been up to, and along with all of our active drafts. I did see the use cases one get updated late yesterday, so thank you very much on that one. So a bit of an update on where we are. I think to echo Wes from previous calls, we've stormed through the working group to get to the first AD review. So well done, everyone. I think it will. That's part of our agenda today is to go through that first AD review and pick up any actions. We'll come on to the agenda in a moment, but I think it's just nice to take a pause and reflect on how far we've come in the relatively short time we've been working together. So well done, everyone. Oh.
Yeah, one quick comment about that. So the next steps after, Thomas is going to talk to the changes that were done in a minute, and then our new AD, Andy, is going to probably review it again. Sorry, Andy, you're jumping in, from the cold. So thank you to Ori, who is stepping down off the AESG and has helped us for the last 2 years. But so we greatly appreciate his help over time, and Andy will be shepherding things, and he may review it again. And so we're on that point on that line, and then it'll go to last call, and that will as I've mentioned before, give a lot of additional comments, right? You don't get through last call without a lot of comments coming back as well. And that's a good thing. It makes the documents better. So, and then it'll go to the IESG, which will also produce a lot of comments.
And yeah, and to echo Wes, thank you, Ori, for all of your support over the last couple of years. So on to today's agenda. So introduction, the updates to the SATP course. So thank you, Thomas, for taking the lead on that one. The charter to look forward into the future, obviously with the caveat that we do need to progress to the end of the stages on the previous slide before we can officially start the new charter, if it's accepted. And then a piece on stage 0 architecture, which is the important context for this set of working documents, but it does form a part of officially the new stage charter. And then any other business. And then I will hand over to Wes. Thank you very much, Wes.
All right. With that, I think, Thomas, you are up. So our agenda for the day, we will go through the changes that Thomas and others have done to the 3 core documents in order to reflect Ori's comments. After that, we'll talk about the charter. This could be a shorter meeting. Normally, we fill all time. I suspect that we won't this time for the first time, possibly ever. And then Thomas will come back and talk about the stage 0 architecture. As a reminder, the stage 0 architecture is on our future charter. So we always push, the future items to the back of the meetings because we really do need to progress on getting the main documents out the door first. And then Andy will give us feedback for the charter as well as the timing for when he wants to put it in place, or if he wants to wait until the last call for the IETF is totally done. That's sort of up to the IESG to make that decision, but we're headed in the right way. So Thomas, with that, we'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Should I try sharing slides, or could you drive the slides with?
Either way, I can pass slide control to you too. I have to first turn off slides.
Screen share?
No, you don't want to do screen share. You want to do the one next to that, slide share. Here, I'll pull them up and then I'll pass you slide control. So you should see buttons appear in a second. Go ahead and start talking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just a couple of slides on the architecture updates. There wasn't much this time because Ori had done a great job, I think, way back. Ori, I apologize, I think it was in November, just after that IETF. And then following that, there was a longer set of actually more important comments on core, which is the actual protocol. Okay, that way. Okay, so throughout both documents, we said, TLS 1.2 or TLS 1.3, and I think, we're convinced now we're just going to say TLS 1.3. Let's not even mention 1.2, as an option. It's kind of useful just to say straight out 1.3 because a lot of the readership for this would be a lot of the financial institutions, banks, and so on, SWIFT. And they just should use the latest thing, which is 1.3. Improved text to explain that stage 0, what we call colloquially as stage 0, is really the pre-setup stage. How do you figure out if the asset trying to be transferred is truly exists, and so on and so on. So added text there. A good suggestion from Ori was the reading orders. we didn't tell the reader which document they should read first. So it's okay, read architecture first. It has all the concepts about two-phase commit and so on before you go into core. Because in fact, we did have one guy who started reading core and got completely lost and emailed me and said, actually, no, you should read the architecture first. A terminology section has been aligned with the use cases. So there's same wording and now identical definitions. It was slightly different. So that was good. That was a good catch. Next is two-phase commitment. So from the beginning, we started off with, for those who know database transactions, we started off with a 3-phase commit, a 2.5-phase commit. and it was overkill. So we literally took one arrow out that reduced it to a true, one-to-one two-phase commit. And however, in the text, we kept saying 2PC or 3PC, 2PC or 2. So now we just said, forget 3PC. We know it's there. We know it can be done with just a single addition of an arrow, but don't confuse the reader. Just say 3PC. Another thing that Ori, caught, and a good thing he insisted. We were using the word should, must, and so on, kind of loosely in lowercase. The implementation should this, should do that. So now in many places it's capitals. Typos as usual, lots of typos and unclear sentences. So that's architecture. Now core, which is the more recent set of comments. So this also went through a lot of updates. Again, two-phase commit, only, no mention of 3PC. TLS 1.3 throughout. In some places we had pub key and public key, so now it just says public key. So for example, the variable originator public key is now spelled out public key, not pub key. A few broken references, citations that have been fixed. Another good addition from Ori was that we had listed things like time block, hash time block. These are all constructs that a number of ledgers and blockchains use to temporarily disable tokens or assets on a blockchain. And we were just casually saying these things without any references. And so now for each one of these types, we've added a reference, an example, at least one example of a particular ledger system that uses something like this. So the hash type, HTLC is used in Ethereum, for example. This is, if people are interested, this is section 5.315. Lots of typos have also been corrected. So that, in fact, even when I was converting it to text from Markdown, there were still typos, which is just as well. But that's all fixed.
Ori has a hand up, so why don't we let him
go back. Let me go back.
That slide.
Right. Or still, I guess, as your responsible AD, but only, Chair, it's kind of up to you if you want to in-depth kind of back and forth on any of these points. But the public key thing is a thing I care deeply about, public key representations and that sort of thing. So if there's time, I kind of would like to unpack that one a little bit more. Up to you.
We have a ton of time today, Ori, so go ahead and hit it.
Okay. So I think when I read the document, so first of all, based on my career experience, I have spent a lot of time converting public keys between different formats, and I've made mistakes doing that. And when I looked at the document, I think the examples that I saw had kind of hexadecimal encoded public keys, and I wasn't sure exactly what the format of those hex blobs was. With my AD hat on, my bias would be like, which RFC could define the public key format that you should be using in your document, because otherwise, why are you making a new public key format in this kind of document? So I wonder if there's a chance to just talk through that piece. And every now and then it's the case that you do need for backwards compatibility to support a non-IETF key format in a protocol. So we see that. But I don't know if this is one of those cases. That's it.
No, good. Thank you. So this was the big one, the big catch. Thank you, Ori. We're pretty loose throughout the document saying JSON this, JSON that. But reading Ori's comment, is very clear. We had to be very specific. So the basically, we're going to be using JSON-related constructs, whether it's JWK or JWA. So Ori, in that example of a public key that is a hex, that was just a random hex. But in reality, it needed to be a key object with curly braces, closed curly braces with the key and the algorithm. And it said, oh God, this is going to be a page-long example. It's going to spill over to page 2. So we basically, converted it like this hex. And I've added a line on the top. The key object has been replaced by hex for brevity sakes, but we know it needed to be the proper key object.
And you have cases where you're sort of hashing these messages. So if you start changing the formats of these things, you're going to get there's opportunities for the ordering of members to be different inside of an object in JSON. So it could have a bigger impact as it starts to become, more interoperable and more expressible in terms of key format. So
That's right. Yeah.
sounds like you've
And,
already considered it.
Yeah, and we've added, since this this topic, we've added a line there saying, when you sign, just to very, very clear, you got to serialize it, or some people say canonicalize it, and compress it before you sign it. The usual stuff. But we kind of assume the reader would know this, but no, we can't assume the reader knows this. So we've actually put that in there as a line.
So since you just mentioned canonicalization, which is another old friend of mine, I did have that question. I think I gave it in a comment on one of the documents about, how are you ensuring that a JSON object will always, hash to the same bytes, like for signature purposes. I think I mentioned JCS is one option. It's an independent stream document, but it does provide a mechanism to do that inside of JSON. Did you pick one yet, or are you still sort of
no? So that one we left that, we just did the nice statement saying you gotta serialize this, whatever, remove spaces and whatever before you sign.
Is it a problem if everyone decides to do that differently?
It's the problem if everybody decides. So could we? I would like to pick one. Like, can you guys? Ori, can you just tell us which one?
So this is an issue. This is an area where you very easily could get into an endless debate going on forever. One of the things in the HOSI family that folks do is they sign in base 64 encoded data as a way of kind of getting around this problem. So that's not canonicalization. It's sort of armoring of the payload and then signing the armored version as a way of escaping the fact that spaces, tabs, and JSON key member ordering are all variables. That is one approach. You can kind of force it into an armored representation and sign the armored representation. The other approach is to describe a procedure that normalizes JSON. And JCS is one way to do that, but read the JCS document. There's a whole bunch of gotchas, inside of that. And so I would tend to say, my preference is to do things more like how HOSI handles it when this problem happens. I think how HOSI has handled it for protected headers is probably my preference. But your protocol, the way that it's written right now, doesn't necessarily lend itself easily to that. So I think this is really something the working group needs to consider. It's not something that I would want to pick for you.
So one of the things that I put when I reviewed it a long time ago, Thomas, is that in all of these cases, if a reader was not able to communicate with the authors, they picked up the document, could they do something that's interoperable? So, a bunch of those have been fixed in the last year, especially. And a lot of times that's, exactly what Ori was spelling out of, if you receive a base 64 encoded blob, you have no idea what it is. You just know it's encoded, but without some sort of type identifier or something else saying, I'm now going to pass you this type of key in this format, and it's a base 64 encoded string of that key. Is it the public key? Is it the private key? Right? All of those types of things have to be done in order for the receiver to be able to intelligently decode it. As I'm not a Jose expert, so I'll let Ori continue to be the expert there. But if he's right, if you can point to something else that says we're going to do it just like this other RFC, you no longer have the burden of having to do it. But in your document, you still have to say we're going to do it just like that other RFC. Otherwise, nobody knows what's actually being passed.
Okay. I think, okay, looks like, well, Dennis, you've already implemented JCS, so you probably have reasonable experience, and maybe we can ask Alex, what you guys did in Quant. Okay, we can take that offline. But thank you, Ori. I think we'll pick one.
So
JCS
one final comment. I think Dennis's point of we use is the clarifying notion there that they picked something, right?
Yes, definitely. We had to.
Yeah, it is had to. Okay, no, good. Andy, are you good with JCS? Andy's, yeah, please.
I don't care, but Ori did put something very relevant in the chat that it's going to be a down ref and gets called out during last call. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, all right, good. Thanks, Andy. Okay, so this slide is literally cut and paste from what's in the text. So you'll find this was pointing out the word mass is now in capital letters. You know, so very clear, and all the relevant references, I think, like JJabluke and so on, is in there. Okay, what's the next? Give me 1 second. That's 5. Is the slide moving? Oh, so this is interesting. So at the end, towards the end, we had this error table, and there was an interesting question that made me think for a while, Ori. Like, okay, how would some of this error code actually occur when you do a protocol run? So many of those possible errors have to do with the identifier values that has already been agreed upon in stage 0. So a good example is, you know, asset ID 1234 is the one we're talking about, right? The two gateways say. And then if any one of them changes that, you know, suddenly the next message, you know, you know, in the two-phase commit, that ID was replaced. There's a mismatch. So that's an error. And right now, if an error like that occurs, I think the transaction, the whole session just gets terminated. So yeah, so this is, and that text there, Ori, is what I added at the top of that section 13.1, basically explaining, you know, where some of these codes come from.
So this is one thing. When I read the document, I was really confused why you're why be prescriptive at all about these identifiers for your protocol. Like, they're, like you said, they need to be agreed upon by both sides. But isn't that just the case that, like, as long as both gateways agree that the identifier is I guess so you're saying that these error codes exist because at any point in the protocol, a gateway might send a malformed in the context of the receiving party's identifier.
On purpose. Yeah. So we're
Right.
allowing for dishonest gateways. This is the other problem, is that, you know, these are
Yeah. So
we're trying to make it clear that reduce the room for being dishonest. Like, you're gonna get caught, right? Just by little switching, you know, ideas here and there, right? Because, you know, I mean, you guys hear the news all the time. There's always crazy stuff you know, happening in the crypto space. So, you know, we're working on this assumption that people are gonna be just as dishonest now in this new world of tokenized assets.
So in each of these cases, like, there's several messages. Each message can contain multiple identifiers. Any one or more of those identifiers could be malformed in a given message that's being transmitted between the parties. And you have error codes for each of the potential places in that message where that identifier might be malformed. And when I read that, I was sort of like, well, why does it matter if one of them is malformed? Am I not just rejecting the entire message? Is it meaningful to have, for example, 2 identifiers in a given message being malformed? Is that important to signal back, you know, other than just reject? Like, why not just, you know, HTTP 400, right? Why have these separate, you know, individual error codes within a given message? That was my feeling as I read the document.
Right. So we're sort of building for the next, one of the next features, which is, could we do session resumption? So is it possible gateway 1 sends something malformed and gateway 2 says, okay, terminate everything, but instead of doing that, gateway 2 might return an honest error message, hey, this identifier is malformed, can you resend? Okay, so provide room. So we're anticipating this feature in the future, which is Wes is. I don't think crash recovery, session resumption is not even in the.
Yeah.
It's not in the recharter proposed text, right? So that's even future. But with that, let's put it there just in case, right? So you wanna give room, because if you've got all the way, in the flows to the almost the very end, and something goes wrong, like, do we have to restart again from like line 1, which is like,
So it's something for the working group, to consider for this. Like, I would try to use something that's out there that has, the affordances that you need in your protocol. One of them is this HTTP problem details JSON format, which has been translated to CBOR, but it's kind of a common way of expressing errors. And you might find that there's some useful stuff there. But when I read this, I sort of felt like, whoa, there's a lot of text about errors in here, and I'm not sure what I would do as an implementer if I got any of these individual messages. So that's my comment.
Right now, it's like drop session. That's all they can all do. I mean, there's no like, there's no second chance. So this is anticipating a possible sort of second chance retransmission.
So taking off my chair hat and putting on my operator hat, Ori in particular, I always like more error messages. So when I get, some HTTP error code that's like 404 and I have no clue why it became a 404, that drives me nuts. And also from a coding point of view, if I can get a unique identifier specifier that says this is the error that I got, that it clearly explains why, a lot of times with an additional blob of text with supplemental detail, that allows me to debug sort of the situations a lot. We actually recently, one of my recent RFCs is actually doing that on the DNS side. And we went from, I think, starting the draft with like 4 additional error codes to ended up with 27 or something as the working group got through the process of all of the corner cases. And that turned out to be a fairly popular, document, because it really gives the operators the context in their logs of this is what went wrong, so that when you need to go back and figure it out. And I would say for financial transactions, that's probably even more important. But so with that, Andy?
Yeah. So obviously I don't understand this protocol, so I'm not as familiar as Ori, even though I did read his comments. But this whole thing about and Wes, I agree with you. More error description is usually better. But if this is being used over HTTP and you're doing things like I'm returning 200, but it's really an error or something like that, then you're going to run into issues with BCP 56 alignment. So okay. I would suggest going through BCP 56 and making sure you're aligned there.
Okay, no, that's good input. Yeah, didn't think of that. You're going through. Okay, well let's do that. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Let me go next. That's it. Last, just huge thank you to Ori. Ori, now that you're free, you can help us write some drafts.
I'm grateful that you think I'm a security AD, but I'm an applications and real-time area director, and if the security ADs see this, they're going to be unhappy. So
okay, I'm sorry to have demoted you. Sorry, I'll
appreciate it.
Application AD.
Well, the confusion stems from Paul, who was the previously assigned AD, was actually a security AD. So we have shifted from.
You just assumed,
but yes. We're in the apps area. So yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I will stop sharing, or do you want to take control back?
You can go ahead and stop sharing.
Stop slides. Okay.
Let me, so so going back to the chair slides, the next item in the agenda was the charter discussion. We have gone over it extensively. Last time we actually went through paragraph by paragraph and thought about it, as well as came up with the list of next goals that that we should do, and narrowed it down to 5 or 6 or whatever the current count is. Since that time, I took the previous charter, rewrote it a lot, And then Claire took it and actually made it readable. She greatly improved the wording and a bunch of other semantics and things, as well as added some additional background and goals and things like that. So it's fairly lengthy right now. It's probably a little bit longer than average charters, and the IESG, of course, will give us feedback on that as well. And Andy's already promised me that he'll review it sometime in the near future too. End result, I did not make a slide deck with each paragraph on it because I think we're beyond that. I sent it to the mailing list yesterday. I meant to send it earlier in the week. Sorry about that. And this is just a time slot where, people that have read it can, comment on whether they have issues with it or things that don't look good if you have managed to read it in the last 24 hours or so. So with that, since I suspect some people are staring at their laptops looking at it, we'll give a slight pause, but if anybody wants to bring up comments on the charter or think it looks bad or good or have suggestions, now's the time. But we'll pause here until it feels like there's enough time. All right, I am not seeing any hands, and I'm getting a lot of comments in the chat saying it looks good. So I think with that, Andy, it's probably on your plate now to take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah. I need to figure out where this fits into I need to figure out the priority for this. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I think if we go for a recharter now without the documents actually in the current set of documents in they're not even, are they in PubRec? What's the status? They're PubRec.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So without them having gone to a ballot, I think I'm going to get some pushback. So we may have to wait there.
No, that's fine, and I should fill you in on the status, which is the documents have gone through multiple reviews internally. It's gone through working group last call. It's now gone through AD review, has been sent back with a revision needed is the current state of the 3 documents. And then Thomas just talked about what the changes he made to reflect Ori's comments. I would argue you actually absolutely have the right to then go review them all as well and provide additional comments. But in the long run, yes, they should get to IETF last call and all through that process when the IASG wants to consider a recharter, because they think that these documents are far enough along that a recharter is the right time. The timing's up to you guys. So. Yeah,
I will say I don't remember what I said much about it, but I did read Ori's comments just because I have to keep him honest. But I do think there was, just as a heads up, there was one document that had a bunch of common names or something in there, or names of companies or something, and I'm probably going to be insistent that those get changed to example names or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm surprised I didn't catch those if you did. So what we can always put it in an appendix and have the RC editor remove it if there's implementation examples or something. But yes,
yeah,
I agree.
As I recall, it was the names of 2 companies, VeriSign and GoDaddy. So, but it could have been something else too.
I'm sure Thomas is somewhere nodding his head right now, so it's all good.
Okay, it's probably the use cases, because I think the example text is all example.com or gateway 1, gateway 2. I think in fact we used to use like quant.gateway 1, and then we took out quant.
Yeah, and I think Rama's got his hand up remotely. Sorry, first in queue as the author of that doc.
Yeah, thanks. So I did take a look at Ori's comments, and unfortunately I couldn't get time to fix them until yesterday. The specific comment was about not using an example alice.com. So he suggested I should use alice.example instead. So I changed that. Yeah, it's updated now.
Yeah, and that kind of thing is that's a well we have a lot of very well understood examples for that type of thing. But what is not usually clearly spelled out is you can't use common names unless there's a really good reason for doing it, right? So we kind of shy away from doing that.
Yeah, and for those less familiar with the IETF process, the use of .example at the end of a DNS name or example.com are both accepted. They're documented as example, domain names that we can use. And I should have caught that being a DNS geek, but.
So just to clarify on Andy keeps using the term, common name, and I think this had, it probably was in the use cases document, but since I read them all at the same time, they're all blending together to me in my mind right now. But the main thing I wanted to point out here is there was sort of a use case in here that looked like it would kind of overlap with or directly connect to the registrations extensions working group. It was like EPP was mentioned in it, and so the main point of that AD evaluation feedback was, have you talked to the registrations extensions group? Have you asked the chairs to, share the document and the framing around, the language that you have about EPP in that group? And that is the specific text that mentions, VeriSign and GoDaddy, as I recall. So it's just, when you're in your working group talking about a protocol that's maintained by another IETF working group, it's always good to ask that your chairs of both groups, hey, take a look at this, maybe have the working group coordinate feedback around that topic. That's it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I kept saying common name, I meant proper name. What I'm specifically talking about is like we had unrelated to this, but we had a document come through the IESG, and it named a pop star as just an example and something that was describing music or something like that. And it was like everyone was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool," but you can't do that. So, or you shouldn't do that.
Okay, thank you. So we wandered away from charter discussions, but that's okay. I'm actually a close colleague of the chair of Regex, so I will talk to him specifically, like asking him to look at the use case document from that point of view. That's a really good point, by the way, of other groups may want to review that if it closely aligns with another use case. One additional point for the charter as yesterday in the SPICE working group, which is not something I normally follow, but I happened to be in there yesterday to be the Google employee sitting in the Google office that we had to have somebody assigned to there. Somebody actually talked about bill of lading related drafts that they were looking into how to encode those. And then, that was a very early discussion in the start of SATP for similar future work items. And then it was also mentioned that it's going to be SCIM is the other group that, also has interest in that group. So those people in this group that are interested in doing bill of lading stuff, I'd suggest, and I posted a note to it yesterday to the mailing list, you reach out to those authors and then maybe collaborate with them, because we probably want to make use of whatever working group ends up defining that data structure and document semantics. We'll probably want to make reuse of it here. So we'll want to make sure that regardless of what working group ends up defining something like that, we can reuse it here. Skit, thank you. Skit and Spice, thank you. I am at the end of 15, 16, 17 days of travel, and my brain has decided to turn off this morning. So I apologize. I hit a wall sometime about 7 a.m. this morning. So thank you all. Anyway, so those might want to go look at it. That's my only point. It's not in our charter at the moment, but I know that there's working group members that have high interest in that particular category. So with that, last call for charter discussions and items. Hearing none, then I think, Thomas, we will go to you now for stage 0 considerations.
Okay. Oh, and then a slides get requests. Okay.
Yep.
Slide.
Yes. And then you get to pick the slide deck.
Oh, okay. So it's stage 0. Okay. Sorry, I didn't
That's okay.
that's pretty fancy. You can choose slides. Okay. So this is just I guess a report into the group. Several members of the group have been talking about this for at least 6 months, maybe 9 months. What we call stage 0. So for those who new to the SATP working group, our stages was like stage 1 was prep, stage 2 was locking, asset locking, and stage 3 is the two-phase commit confirmation. So it's stage 1, 2, 3. So we've been saying stage 0 basically for the setup stage. So I think going forward we might have to call it something better, like a setup phase. So in discussing all of this, we're trying to sort out the different sub areas, and there's at least 3, if not more. So I'm just going to list 3 and describe briefly what they mean and what they apply to. So the big one here is what we call the pre-transfer context establishment. So before SATP core actually runs, the most common scenario, at least in our minds, is that here's a user Alice on an application agreeing with user Bob on application 2, saying, I'm going to transfer to you, Bob, this particular asset. Call it a tokenized asset in this particular network, and there's an asset ID and so on and so on. And so these 2 applications need to establish out of band some kind of a identifier and contextual information that's relevant, and then each of these will have to communicate these choices to the gateways, and then the gateways will, the operators of the gateway will of course want to verify identities, Alice's identity, Bob's identity, and of course whether the tokenized asset truly exists, and it's and so on and so on. So that's kind of the setup, and so that's what we mean by when context establishment. And so this is problem area 1. There's a couple of slides on this. Problem area 2 is if you're an asset issuer, you're a bond issuer, you're the DTCC in New York, or you're Franklin Templeton that's just wanting to do tokenized bonds, or your Goldman Sachs that's actually it's Morgan Stanley, the ones who like issue their own tokenized securities. It's pretty straightforward to do this today on several blockchains. That's not the problem. The problem is that where do we find the information that backs up this claim, saying that this is a truly legitimate asset, regulated asset within a particular jurisdictions like the United States or the European Union or some other country? So that's problem 2. Problem 3, and we talk about artifacts registry, and this is interesting because somebody Wes, you just mentioned SCIT. So this is you'll see this is very reminiscent of the SCIT problem, or the set of things that SCIT is solving. Number 3 is so I'm a gateway. I've received this context, or I'm Bob. I'm Bob's app, and like Alice is sending me this information, this token. Where do I find out where all this information resides, all the off-chain stuff, all the legal stuff, where do we do that? And so, and how do you access it? So that's problem set 3. So okay, so let me just do quickly one. So this is roughly the setup stage protocol between the application 1, gateway 1, application 2, and gateway 2. So this is kind of what it looks like. But and ignore all the details. This is still sketch. The important thing that's different from the previous flow in SATP core is that now we've got this thing in the middle which we call the artifacts registry, for lack of a better name. If people have a better name than a registry, we're quite open to that. The idea being that this is a place where the concerned parties can go and check something or can fetch data to do some checking, right? So how do we do that? So that's kind of what it is. And and the purpose is, I think, before you even start course, at the very least, to verify the correctness of some of this information. So if Alice says, "Oh, I've got a tokenized asset in network 1. Here's the identifier," did Alice choose the, was there any error in that choice? Was it a real choice? Did Alice try to lie? All that stuff. Verification of identity of actors. So in the realm of regulated assets, at least the United States, actually even globally, there are some identity KYC AML requirements that needs to be fulfilled. So actors, including gateway operators, they're under obligation to check the identity of the actor, check the identity of Alice, check the identity of Bob. Is it a real identity? Is it a fake identity? And so on and so on. So that's part of this process. And if you go to the documents section of SATP, you'll see a proposal from Ned Smith on using a thing called a VLEI. For those who don't know, LEI is the legal entity identifier, which most corporations in the world have today. It's a string number, but it's like a string only. VLEI wraps a whole bunch of stuff around it, including keys and so on and so on. Then verification step is how do you update if you're the issuer and you're issuing a particularly tokenized asset based on some kind of what we call profile, call it a template, we call it profile, and then you update the template file itself. Like, what happens? Do you have to update the registry where all this metadata resides, right? So this is a big problem. Maybe some of this stuff is out of scope. Right now, we're just throwing that in so that it's clear that we're thinking about it, and maybe SATP is not the place to do it. Maybe the IETF is not the place to do it. Maybe some other organizations such as ISO could do it, or a network such as the Swift community could address the problem. Okay, so this is kind of I'm sorry, LEIs do not cover most corporations. Thank you, Ori. Ori is better informed than I am. I just assume everybody's got an LEI, but that's just me, living in a bubble called Boston. So there you go. and Boston is a bubble, folks. Believe me. So this is kind of a rough sketch of what we're talking about. So we're using the European Union definition of a reference token. So if you read the MiCA regulation, markets in crypto assets, back in 2013, they split the road. There's this fork in the road. One token is they call electronic money token, basically currencies such as stable coins like USDC and so on that is available today. And the second one, which is the challenge, is here's the token on chain on a ledger, but the token has a whole bunch of pointers, whatever the pointers mean. Maybe it's a URI, URL, to something that's off chain. The idea being is that the ownership of the asset off chain is signified by you controlling the token on chain using your public key, right? But the token itself is not the value, unlike currency tokens. It's just a ownership proof, right? And so we've split this into two. There's the value part, and then there's the data part. And we're concerned about the data part because without the right pointers and ways to look for the data, discover the data, and verify it, no recipient, no gateway is going to want to handle this, right? And this is part of the setup stage. So this is what it looks like. And so the idea is, here's the issuer. It dumps a whole bunch of metadata into a registry somewhere. We don't know where. It's an append-only registry. We think it needs to be persistent, i.e., like 50-year persistent type of thing. And then the issuer mints this token on this asset network 1, NW1, it's got these 2 parts. And then the gateway's got instructions from Alice, oh, transfer this token that I own to Bob in network 2. So gateway 1 reads, it has access to the ledger. It reads the token first before it does anything and says, okay, here's 2 parts, the data part and the value part. I'm going to look at the data part and verify all the pointers before I even do anything, even before I even do the SATP core, right? So that's why it's yellow, and that's what this whole discussion about registry is concerned about. A large part of stage 0 is about verifying the data part, the yellow bit. Okay, next slide. And so, why is this relevant? And Dennis is probably the best person to explain this, but and we've been using this structure called a tokenized asset record to talk about that yellow part. It's basically making a utility token. The utility has no monetary value. It's just a data token. But what we put in this data part and how we process it has implications on how we design the registry. What do we want as the requirements from the registry? Is it beyond the obvious things like append only and persistence? What else? What does the API look like? How do we need access control over it? Could we use something like Skip, which is basically a transparency service that's appending stuff, it's been signed by a notary to an append only ledger, right? So this is why you think why is Thomas going on about this token, this data, the data part, because it has implications to the design of the registries, or at least what we'll be demanding in terms of requirements. And this is again related, right? So and anyone who's got questions, feel free to jump in again. This is a sketch, no solutions offered, just trying to understand the problem areas. And so if I was an issue, I was Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, which registry do I choose if there are multiple? Is it asset class dependent? Do I say, well, for bonds you have to use this ledger system because that's what the bonds industry in London sort of is using. If it's I don't know, tokenized real estate, maybe it has to be this ledger. Why? Because the big real estate players, developers in this world use that particular ledger, right? So that's that's the first question. Another interesting one is that if indeed the token has the value, the asset has a data part attached to it, in SATP core, when we transfer the token using core, does it mean the data part also gets copied over with the value token to network 2? Right, so this is probably the immediate answer, but yes, we need to do that anyway, right? So this is the question we need to clarify. Are there any implications to this, right? So if in SATP core gateway 2 is supposed to be reminting this token, what if gateway 2 is slightly dishonest and changes the contents of the data field, some of the data fields? Okay, this is for later discussion. Interesting other question. If then some artifact information in a registry is updated by the community, say there's a bonds community, in London with all the bond traders and industry, and they use a template, as I said before, and they modify the template, or there's some new regulation coming in that necessitates a new field being added into the template, and therefore to all future tokens, how do they update the registry? And what if the registry has copies, propagating copies? Do we have to manage all these copies, right? So now Ned Smith suggested, well, something, as usual, we don't want to invent stuff. We want to reuse what is in the IETF or what already exists in industry. Could we use something like the pub sub model? So the issue of does an update, and a whole bunch of parties are sort of waiting to get notification, right? Things like that. Another one, if we're going to use something like LEI, VLEI, some kind of verifiable credentials and so on, does that get stored in a registry, artifacts registry? Right. I'm being careful when I say registry, because people think, oh, you talk about the DNS. I say, no, we're not talking about the DNS. We're talking about the artifacts registry. Lots more questions that we need to answer as part of the discussion. I think that is it. Okay, sorry, I haven't been reading the chat, by the way. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put up your hands.
Ori, go ahead.
So you said it at the end, we're not talking about the DNS, but why aren't you talking about the DNS? It sounds like you're trying to publish a bunch of information. There's been a lot of presentations, at this IETF about storing various things in the DNS and naming things with the DNS. And it seems to me that you're naming things that you need to send updates about when they change, and the DNS would work fine for some of these use cases, right? Potentially, like much better than more complicated things that aren't, necessarily well defined, right, by the IETF. So why is it that this discovery of changes to an asset isn't the same problem of discovering changes to an agent configuration that's named by the DNS?
No, that's a good for detecting
as
changes.
An individual.
Yes, yeah. For detecting changes, yes, we could use the DNS, but the artifact itself, the registry needs to be append only and persistent 50 years. Meaning that's why I mentioned SCIT, having more permanence than DNS, because you could always reconfigure the DNS, right? Remove records and so on.
I'm not sure that problem needs to be solved by this group. You guys are building gateways where you often assume some structure of the network and all security properties of the networks behind the scenes, and each of those value networks have different security properties, and we can talk about how some of them are safer for certain security threats and others are safer for a different set of security threats. So I'm not sure that you need necessarily to have any of that here. And then also, in the protocol that goes back and forth, you're committing to structures along the way. So I guess, it seems to me like, first of all, you might not need to pull in all of SCIT to this use case. And then second, like if this is a naming and discovery of updates regarding a name thing, like that is a problem that's sort of pretty well solved for within the IETF already. Anyway, that's all these comments are as an individual.
Yeah. No, thank you. So that the last bit is we don't so we don't want to reinvent the pub sub model. So yeah, anything we could use, I think we want to use. And for the registry, Ori, we might end up specifying requirements. It has to have this, and this feature. And so somebody wants to stand up a service, artifacts registry service that satisfies those requirements, running a database, depending on your database, fine. They want to use a hash graph, fine. Some people might want to use IPFS, for those who know what IPFS is, right? So, okay, so long as you can have your providers, these guarantees, persistence and so on, then it's good. The reason why I talk about persistence is that the financial industry persists stuff. I mean, I'm told there are documents that are like 60 years old and 70 years old that are still live, as a form of security, as a form of asset, right? So that's kind of gives you an indication that for digitized or digital assets, the industry may want persistence going out 50 years, probably even longer.
So also as an individual, and an individual with a lot of DNS background, and knowing at least knowing at a high level the SAT architecture, I would think that So if you want to put something in the DNS, it's really the gateway discovery mechanism, so that knowing you need to talk to a network, a SAT network that is registered under example.com, you could search for something like underbar satp.example.com, which is a common way of, we do stuff in the DNS these days. That would get you to the gateway. So you know how to contact the gateway, possibly using a Dane key as something as Ned put into the comment of knowing how to trust that you got to the right place. And then you really need, because the gateway is going to be able to communicate the assets behind it, right? You don't want to put all the assets into the DNS. That would be too much.
Right.
Although people do that kind of thing, don't get me wrong. It seems better, and especially from like a pub sub type of model, then after that to say, please connect to the gateway, give me your current set of available assets that you're able to transfer, whatever that might be, and also let me subscribe, because I know you're about to publish a bunch more and I want to be the first person to bid on it, or whatever. You can imagine all those types of cases. That seems to me like a much more efficient way to do stuff. So you end up building a network of gateways that are connected based on the DNS lookup records for how to contact each other, something like that. You're building a world that's going to take decades to roll out.
yeah.
But
So,
with that,
I apologize. I don't know what ATP is. That a new working group?
that is the
Yes.
protocol that is being used in Blue Sky. And so Andy, it looks like you actually know the answer. That was being talked of coming to the IETF. I haven't heard that it actually did.
No. We just assigned 2 co-chairs, so the announcement hasn't gone out yet, but it should go out in a couple of days.
Awesome. Okay. So Dennis.
Yes, a couple of comments here. Okay, the 50-year persistence, it's something that is probably related to what Thomas said about the profiles and all the history of what the definition of the assets are, because the transfers within Gateway would be something that has a definite and short-lived time until the transfer is completed. So indeed, we don't need such a long period for proofs of logs or any other thing related to the consistency of the transfer, protocol transfer in SATP. So the main thing about what we're discussing here in the setup stage is, first of all, to have a sort of persistency mechanism that is outside the networks that might allow to have more semantics integration of the different transfer of assets, because every network might have a different way of representing assets. And this is different from the notification mechanism that is definitely necessary everywhere in SATP, because also the state of the transfers, the fact that the gateways might have completed, all the notifications that during the protocol might be necessary for liveness and safety reasons. So all of that are things and mechanisms would be needed to notify. So the discovery also of asset profiles and things like that is also something that requires notifications. So the pub sub mechanism, to me, it's an orthogonal thing. It's different from the storage that we're discussing here about registries.
Yep. No, thank you, Dennis. Yep. And thank you, is it Andy, who posted the ATP? So that's it. Oh, all right, thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. I think if we could use ATP, we would just use ATP. We don't want to reinvent ATP.
Yep. All right. So with that, I don't see any better hands. Is there anybody else that has comments or questions for Thomas on at least this preliminary thoughts of stage 0? Also referred to, as somebody pointed out, the setup stage or something like that in the existing documents. Okay, Thomas, I think if that's the case, I don't see any more hands, so I think that we're good. And that actually brings us to any other business. Is there anybody else that has things they want to bring up for the day before we close? Ori.
If we had time, I wanted to come back as an individual for all of this to the schema registry sort of topic, because I have seen this kind of show up in a bunch of different places around. A protocol has a whole bunch of types. They want to make sure everyone agrees on what those types look like within that protocol. And so if this sort of the shape of the asset problem could be kind of very, very well crystallized, and I've seen shadows of it in the documents that I've reviewed from this group, that seems like a thing where before SATP sort of finally finishes thinking about that, if there is an opportunity to make sure that there's some alignment around this schema registry topic, I think it could be worth just a little bit of coordination with other groups around it. That's my thought.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, one of the things that I have been concerned about is that we keep coming back into centralized versus decentralized kind of, scenarios where everybody wants to make their own registry and things like that. And that was actually heavily discussed this week in the decentralized research group, actually. And that might be one of the other places, Ori, that I would encourage the existing participants to go look at, because they're trying to solve that kind of thing. And interesting enough, everything keeps falling back to the DNS, because at some point you need a registry. But all right, Dennis.
I don't know if I can we can see the slides that I shared before, just to show one or two things following up what Ori was also mentioning. I should have a way to control the slides, or what? Yeah, okay. So yeah, related to the registry, there is one comment in core, one picture in core showing the API 1, API 2, and 3. And so here it's a picture of how the registries might get into the mix with the network and the gateway. So here it's about something that is a standardized way of storing things that are artifacts, as Thomas said, that are necessary in order to be able to have the client and the gateway communicating about the whatever is necessary to share, and specifically for the setup stage. So the thing that is interesting, important here is the fact that we're having assets that are eventually tokenized and they are transferred. So we have not only the case of real world assets that are offline, but definitely we are in an environment where the networks have some sort of digitized version of the asset. And the whole point here is about making sure that when we go over these systems and components, we can have some way of proving that some assets exist, and even more so, giving some hints about the semantics of things. That's where the asset profiles or schemas come in. And it's also the fact that because we are talking about networks that are definitely DLT kind of networks, there is this notion of having the consistency between off-chain and on-chain information. So that's where this notion of tokenized assets come. And the idea of the registry is that we need to cover the flow of information between existing networks, gateways, and also remote networks and gateways. So that's where the registry comes in. So we could have some sort of tokenized asset record, as Thomas explained, that maintains the consistency among all these components. And the artifact registry is the place where we could store this tokenized form, the data part, as Thomas explained. So that's the main idea of having the asset registries on one side to negotiate the setup stage with gateways, and on the other side to maintain some sort of consistency definition of assets that is important when you do transfers, especially when you have different jurisdictions and you have, constraints about the way that the assets are transferred. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, a few things, maybe a different point of view. Different way of presenting things as complementing what Thomas was explaining before. So.
No, thank you for that. I think it's helpful. Anybody have comments for Dennis? All right, I see none. So that brings us back to any other business. Anybody else have things that you want to bring up for the day before we close? All right, I don't see anything. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Peter, for taking notes and manning the front desk for us. I hope to see a bunch of you in Vienna, and which is coming up quickly, as they always do. June, I think, July, somewhere in there. And we will meet again. My guess is we may or may want to have an interim. So if you're interested in an interim, please do write to the mailing list and let us know topics that you might want to address. And Claire and I would be more than happy to set one up. And hopefully it'll be a better time zone for Claire next time. So
Great. Appreciate everyone's inputs today. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks all. Bye.